All right. Good afternoon,
Recording
everyone.
in progress.
Oh, good afternoon. At this time, we'll call to order the Rail Committee meeting of City Council of Palo Alto for Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Lithcott Hames.
Here.
Chair Burt.
Here.
Councilmember Mayor Lowing.
Here.
For the record, 3 are present. We have quorum.
Great. And we have an exceptionally full agenda today, and I know a lot of interest in the community on a number of topics. So I want to ask anyone who wishes to speak to sign up. We have our speaker cards over here, or if you're doing it online, to sign up either in the public comment period, which we're going to do next, which is for any items that are not on the agenda, but within the purview of this committee. And then we have 2 action items later. One is on the grade separation designs, and the other on the second item is on the quiet zone. So at this time, we'll hear from members of the public on any items not on the agenda. And how many cards do we have? We may have to manage the allotted time to be able to get through the meeting.
So through the chair, I have no request to speak for general public comment. Okay. Every comment card is for items number 1 or 2.
Great. Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right. So that allows us, before going into the action items, to go and receive updates from our different agencies. First Caltrain, and then whether we have anything from VTA, and then from our own city staff. And I see we have 2 folks here at the table and from Caltrain. And Navi, did you want to kick it off?
Thank you so much, Chair Burt and committee. My name is Navi Dhaliwal. I'm Caltrain's Government Community Affairs Manager. And because we have such a packed agenda, we wanted to make sure that this specific update was brief and focused on our safety efforts that we've been doing at Caltrain and along the corridor. So I'm actually going to pass it over to Mike Meter, Caltrain's Chief Safety Officer, to provide an update. And we're both available to answer any questions the committee or the public may have. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Burt and committee members. I'm Mike Meter. I'm the Chief Safety Officer at Caltrain. A brief update here on some of the efforts that we've been making, working together with the city. 2 major safety upgrades in Palo Alto, really focused on enhancing the grade crossing safety. The first, we did complete high security fencing. That's 9.5-foot high security fencing along the tracks, west of the tracks from University Avenue Station down to Churchill. So that was completed. That closed a major corridor gap that we found that we had out there on the corridor. The other thing is really focused on the grade crossing and intersection safety. You've probably driven through Churchill and you've seen some of the changes there. We've got some solar markers that are along the edges of the roadway. Those light up pretty bright red at night when you drive through there. We've also been working on some surface markings, changing some of the pavement markings out there. We're going to be actually working with the city to cross hatch that area to better define the dynamic envelope of the train. That'll hopefully alter some of the behaviors that we have out there right now with drivers who stop on the tracks. We also did already complete some construction activity, wider crosswalks with gates out there, different markings on the pavements there. We've also have Rail Sentry, which is a camera and LiDAR AI system out there. And what that system does is it actually, we geo-fence areas. That means mark off specific areas where we have expected behaviors from vehicles and pedestrians. And if there's any unexpected behaviors in those areas, we get real-time alerts so that we can identify where there might be something that could create some type of a hazard, some kind of danger. And we can, of course, contact the trains, stop the trains, get transit police, or anyone else that we need out there to assist in correcting that hazard. Also working very closely with Waze and Google and Apple Maps. We've already had them change oral navigation instructions, Google and Waze, to alert people to the fact the tracks are coming up to cross the tracks before you turn on to whichever road you're turning on, so that we don't have vehicles turning down the tracks. It eliminates a lot of that driver confusion that exists. Anti-trespass panels you also see up there. These are panels that will be placed along the roadway edge on the alignment. I think there was a term coined, kind of a human cattle guard, so to speak. It makes it very difficult for people to walk off of the roadway, off of the sidewalks, onto the track area, onto the alignment. And those are items that we're working on internally from a procurement standpoint to get those out here as well. All of these things that we've done have already made a significant positive impact in reducing the number of vehicles. In fact, there's been 0 vehicles turning onto the track since we made these different improvements. These are modeled after, and the things we're going to continue to do, the next steps are modeled after the improvements we made at Churchill, as well as at Broadway and Burlingame. We are also have been fortunate that VTA, certainly with Director Burt's help over there, has expediting $950,000 in Measure B funding to help us put these same improvements at the remaining Palo Alto crossings at Palo Alto Avenue, East Meadow, and Charleston, I'm sorry. Thank you. And I just saw, as a matter of fact, an email just before I came over here that was approved, and there's a notice to proceed has been issued. So as soon as we get some of those internal things done, you're going to start seeing some of those improvements very, very soon at those other crossings. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Good. Can I just add just a little additional comment to what Mike did before going to the questions? So the innovations, when they were done at Broadway, the first pilot location was primarily to address vehicular safety issues, cars getting stuck on the tracks, cars literally turning down the tracks. Doing that package at Churchill had similar problems, not quite as bad as Broadway, but similar. And so it addressed those safety issues. But in addition, the two that Mike spoke about the rail sentry and these anti-intrusion mats, which are the next thing that will get installed at Churchill, those are really also highly protective of deliberate intrusion by people. And the rail sentry that Mike touched on, as he explained to us previously, was that it's AI empowered. It took a month after it became activated for it to really learn the behaviors, and it will alert the dispatch systems to stop trains if someone lingers in the crosswalk inappropriately, or if they step outside of the crosswalk up track, it'll do it so within seconds. And so that combination of measures, I'd say, is the most promising anti-intrusion technologies that I've seen, and really better than anything we had envisioned for a long time. Our existing detection technology that the city installed in 2016 will remain in place, and this will be additive to that rather than replace it. So
that was actually one of my first questions, was if it was up and running and the AI was trained. So I'm glad to hear that the answer to that is yes. The other thing was just the biggest possible thank you that we could write and display for all Caltrain has done to make this happen. You know the crisis that we're in, and that goes a long way to say things are happening here. We're taking this really, really seriously. The lights themselves on Churchill, the first time I went through there, I said, Martians landing here? I mean, it's just amazing. I go by there all the time, and the first time I was like, whoa, it's so bright. It's great. Just absolutely very, very successful. And then lastly, having funds to do these things and being able to announce that, as I did on a couple of occasions, that is really important, that it's funded, that we're ready to go, and that news is spreading in our town. So again, wonderful, absolutely wonderful news. Thanks.
Julie?
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Appreciate the presentation so much, Mike, and also Pat's clarification or elucidation of what the LiDAR in particular is really capable of doing. You know, given what our community is going through and grappling with recently, I think for the public to really understand at a level of non-technical detail. Y'all are used to talking up here and at the very highest level about this stuff, but just, I really appreciate, I think your explanation, Pat, really got into the specifics of, how does this work? What does it detect? Just to go a little further there, so when somebody exhibits non-standard behavior in the crosswalk, how many seconds does it take before something is activated versus if somebody wanders off into the right of way, how many seconds does it take?
Right. So part of the learning mode that we talked about here, the AI looks at it to just see what different times of day, what is the typical behavior of vehicles, for example, in the roadway. So that could be related to how long the traffic light stays green or red. So it learns all of that behavior from a vehicle standpoint, where vehicles should be and when. Same thing from a pedestrian perspective as well. So it may be during the day when the light, as an example, is green for a vehicle. If the light's expected to be green for 60 seconds, we would expect to see a vehicle there for 60 seconds. If there's a vehicle there longer than 60 seconds, it will alert us. And it just depends on whatever that is. For pedestrians, as an example, if you were to step off of the actual walkway, the crossing, into the alignment, it's set up to alert us.
Tell us what you mean by alignment, the alignment.
Okay, that's right. So where the tracks are. So going down either side of the roadway, if you were to have a pedestrian step off into that space just off of the roadway, we get an alert in 2 seconds. There should never be a person there. So we want to make sure that if we have a person there, we know immediately. The system can also distinguish between bicycles, people, raccoons, all of those kinds of things with a great degree of certainty. So we can set up those business rules, per se, for all of those different areas to let us know, so we don't have 1,000 false alerts, but we also make sure we're alerted when there's a specific problem.
Thank you. Appreciate that. One more question. I'm fascinated by what you're calling the human cattle guard, the anti-trespass panels. I've heard Pat describe them as well as something that has sort of a conical shape and really makes it unstable. My curiosity is, if the train is constantly crossing that thing, how does that material not get damaged by a train rather quickly? How long will it last is another way to frame it.
They say, the manufacturer says those will last about 20 years. So the actual conical pyramids, they're about 6-inch tall, very hard, they call it vulcanized rubber, don't actually sit on the tracks. They sit right up against the tracks. So the train can still go by, yet it basically takes away the ability to walk anywhere around those.
Interesting. Okay, I can picture that now. Thank you so much. That's it for me.
Thanks. And just a couple other comments. One is to really call out our city staff, Caltrain, and VTA, who have been working in recent weeks with a real sense of urgency and partnership on this. Caltrain is normally in a government agency. Procurement takes a long time, getting staff up to do this, and Caltrain is attempting to get this next set of measures installed. The hope is at Charleston and Meadow by year end. And they're really breaking down a lot of barriers to do that. And VTA managed to provide the Measure B funding for this from what was called the Caltrain Modernization funding and get that through very quickly. I will also note that Caltrain is just now adopting what we've been looking at for the last year is a corridor-wide safety and security best practices, everything you can do shy of grade separations, and to pursue that for the entire, what we're doing here for the entire Caltrain corridor. So it's a real step forward. So thanks to everybody for recognizing our sense of urgency and really moving in that same way. Okay, any other Caltrain updates?
The only last thing that I'll update is that we're approaching our 1-year anniversary of the electric trains. And so you'll see a little bit of that excitement as we continue to celebrate this new technology and what strides it's made for members of the community today. And so more to come on that front. And I'll be sure to give a more substantive update the next time I return to Rail Committee. But just thank you so much for the opportunity.
And are we now getting close to a 70% increase in ridership since electrification?
Correct. That's correct.
And we're still below pre-COVID, but we're really moving up. And in particular, the ridership increase is on all the hours that are not the peak commute hours. So the peak commute hours are still well down from pre-COVID, and everything else is actually exceeding that time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, as many of you know, we have always seen wonderful ridership from the city of Palo Alto, and it's great to see like how students are utilizing these trains and getting out there, whether it's to events as opposed to, the daily commuter. So ridership has changed, and I think we're in a different era of what Caltrain looks like for a number of citizens across the corridor. But especially here, we're just seeing how dynamic it can be to get from, whether it's a game at Sharks or a Sharks game or a Giants game. So I think we've really changed, and we're looking forward to continuing that.
Thank you. And I don't know if we have any VTA updates. Do we?
Chantel,
you want to talk about University Station, Chantel? Is that what it is? That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Chantel Cotton Gaines, Deputy City Manager. I'm not providing all VTA updates just for the record, but did want to share information about the VTA Mobility Hub Ad Hoc Committee, of which Chair Burt is a member, along with Sergio Lopez, as well as Margaret Abe Koba. And we're working right now with the Urban Land Institute and Stanford and VTA in order to do a study of the transit center area. They'll be coming out here the week of October 19th. So there's a little bit of action happening each day of that week, but particularly that Tuesday, October 21st, there will be stakeholder interviews of about 100 stakeholders from the Palo Alto community, working with the Urban Land Institute, understanding more about the transit center and the different community needs and interests. And that Friday, October 24th, right here in the City Council chambers, ULI will be making their presentation based off of all their reading of all our existing plans and things that the work that has been done at the transit station related to the transit station, as well as from those stakeholder interviews. And so we're really excited to be engaging with ULI for this effort and for the leadership of the committee.
Julie?
Yeah, thanks so much for that presentation, Ms. Cotton Gaines. For those who are unfamiliar with this, can you just step back and say, this is what the transit center is, this is what we're talking about, this is what ULI does?
Yes, and I'll also look to Chair Burt to fill in any holes that I leave. So the work that the Urban Land Institute will be doing is in the transit center itself. And so if you imagine sort of drawing like a very wide oval around the transit center, not going into downtown.
So this is the University Avenue
Yes,
Palo Alto
thank you.
train station. Thank you.
Yes, right around the corner, the University Avenue train station, the second busiest in the corridor, which I'm sure everyone here is aware of. They're studying that transit area, that station area, not going into Stanford, not coming into the downtown area, but it's really thinking about the gateway that the transit center is for both Stanford as well as the Palo Alto community. And the Urban Land Institute does this type of study work and working with local stakeholders nationwide. They're bringing professionals that are experts on these topics from different parts of the country. I don't yet know the composition of our panel, but I will know soon, and I can share that when we have it. And we're really excited to have sort of the outside perspective, but based off information that we have here in Palo Alto and deeply engaging with people here.
And there's a vision that this transit center could be so much more what than it currently is.
The ad hoc itself is focused on activating that space, is I'd say the undercurrent of the mobility hub ad hoc, and thinking about the short-term and long-term vision of how to really make the transit center more lively and being that gateway that we're thinking about for the community.
So a destination almost in of itself.
Yeah, and the real purpose is to make it a place that will enhance use of transit rather than detract from it. So the VTA Ad Hoc Committee, which has our VTA board chair, our county supervisor, myself, It's focused really on three parts: near term activation to really get the station building open. We've already done a number of measures of cleaning up the station area. We hopefully, in not too distant future, are going to have a coffee shop and bathrooms open within the station building. We already have Caltrain has come forward with bathrooms on the east side. The city is already going forward in the next month or two with renovation of the tunnels and all the lighting in the tunnels. So all those things are happening in the near term. And I'll say that the committee, it's VTA convened, but part of the challenge and opportunity of the transit center has been that it is the west side of the tracks are Stanford-owned land, leased to the city, sublet to VTA. The east side are Caltrain. It's the northernmost station of the whole VTA system, the southernmost of the Samtrans system, and we have AC Transit from the East Bay, and that is recognized by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, as one of the key regional transit hubs because it brings together 5, 6 different agencies. So all those agencies who have all had an interest, but there was never collaboration. They're all in the same room working on this. There's a lot of interest. So it's divided between those near-term measures, medium-term measures, which are related to the Quarry Road extension and the redo of the circulation that's needed when we do that. And then as Chantel was talking about, the vision for the long term that this process with the Urban Land Institute is going to try to help us on. One of the challenges is that as a regional transit hub, we, for better part of 25 plus years, have had, I think, 5 different planning efforts for the transit hub. And they're all gathering dust. And largely because they were wonderful designs and not fundable and not practical from a standpoint, just like with grade separations. We can't shut it down for 5 years for a construction project. So the hope is that we're going to have a outcome from this process that's not the greatest thing we could envision, but the greatest thing we can envision that we can actually achieve and fund.
Yeah.
And it's even so. It's these efforts are not cheap. So that's what it's about.
I commend you for your leadership on this. I think the fact that you and our supervisor and Sergio Lopez are at the table at this moment, given the history you just described, given Caltrain's willingness as a partner, VTA, Samtrans, AC Trans, like it's an incredible synergy, super exciting. And, you know, we are the second most traveled station on the corridor, and we're proud of that. And the gateway to Stanford, the gateway to Palo Alto, there are so many great stories to tell, you know, with a great cafe and some great storytelling, you know, you can see that area could really become quite activated. So I really appreciate the update, and I'm personally very excited.
Yeah, and it's not only the second biggest Caltrain stop in the county, in the whole corridor, but it's the biggest bus station in Santa Clara County, not the biggest VTA, but we have Samtrans Marguerite and AC Transit. And so there are over 400 buses coming and 400 going per day there. We kind of underappreciate how much activity is happening there. So hopefully it's going to have good outcomes. Anything, Ed?
No, good.
Okay, thank you. And then our city staff updates.
Hello, I'm Ria Hutchbarrett-Lowe, Chief Transportation Official. So we have a number of updates. Let me just go to the top of my screen. So Palo Alto Avenue crossing, for this one, Public Works is currently managing the project, which is in construction. This is to create a quiet zone with the features needed for that. This was awarded in early June and should be finished by the end of the year. And then after that's completed, the city will be able to provide a notice of implementation to the Federal Railway Administration and to request that we can have a quiet zone in that area. The other quiet zones you're considering today, Also at Churchill Avenue and Alma Street, the city undertook improvements to that intersection. Caltrain also mentioned that in their update. So construction's complete on that. And the signal timing, the traffic signals have been switched over. We are doing some ongoing monitoring just to tweak things slightly with the signal timing. But that is now up to current standards with the signal in advance of the tracks, so that people are not encroaching on the tracks once they get preempted from the train. There's a similar project in the works for Charleston and Alma, and that's in the 35% design stage at the moment. And that's in progress. And then also the other project is the South Palo Alto Connectivity Project. So for this project, we're developing initial design concepts. There was a community meeting and a PTC meeting on this topic last week. There was a lot of community interest, so we're also extending the online survey into early October, and we'll bring it to Rail Committee in November and City Council in December for initial review, and then go out for our next phase of engagement after that.
Sorry,
That's okay.
Nadia.
So I live in the old Palo Alto neighborhood, and I noticed all the improvements at Churchill. Thank you. I think it might be helpful. I'm noticing a lot of behaviors from people still basically going and then still making the right turn on red the way they used to. I think it might be helpful if we have one of those education signs that's like warning the things have changed and you should be paying attention to them, and also potentially some enforcement to really make sure that that's actually what's happening. Because if you watch the behaviors, even I'm seeing it even on El Camino where the bike lanes were painted, and at Churchill, people are still making right turns on red because they know they used to be able to. And so I would just say that that's an improvement that might help with also with the safety.
Okay, thank you.
And, thank you for mentioning the South Palo Alto Bikeways program, which is looking for at up to 2 locations south of Oregon to have bicycle and pedestrian grade separated crossings. One of the things that I think a number of us have heard from the community is that we had these notifications that went out of potential property impacts, and we are a long ways from even identifying which location, what's more, which properties. So we have to try to figure out how to communicate to the public where we really are in that process, and that we haven't even decided whether we would do a second one. It's a prospect for a long while, 20 plus years, through multiple councils. There have been a series of policy decisions to prioritize a crossing in the vicinity of Matadero Creek. And then the concept of a second one was a newer concept that came forward, and the plan is looking at both of those. But the council longstanding priorities remain in that location. And I'm looking forward to, when it comes to this committee, the opportunity for this committee to determine whether they want to make a recommendation to council on whether to focus on one priority at this time or 2. And then the other things related to that are that I know that the staff has updated the website and things to talk about how that project relates to the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So we aren't just talking about putting a grade crossing to nowhere, that it actually is integrated. And then second, how it relates to these vehicular crossings. And that, I think, is an even more important topic for this committee in that next meeting, so that when we're looking at what the updates we're going to hear in a little while, to what extent is another crossing in that area dedicated for bikes and peds needed? And does it increase or decrease what we'd consider on these vehicular crossings? So even though they're 2 very different construction projects, there's a real relationship. And right now they're being talked about and presented to the community somewhat in isolation. And this committee is the right place, I think, to try to talk about how they affect one another and how they affect decisions we're going to make, including on things today.
Yeah, I appreciate that preview of things to come. Did want to note that this was agendized just as a staff update, so really defer that discussion to when this is appropriately agendized.
I've just noted that she mentioned that that would also be coming on the November timeframe, and I believe Caltrain's thing is also coming on the November timeframe. That seems like a lot of decisions in one meeting. Just flag that.
What will be coming in November is not a decision. It's just introducing the concepts and getting feedback.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our updates from the agencies, and we go on to our first agendized item, which is the initial review of refined conceptual designs for the selection and development of alternatives to proceed with 15% design for grade separations at Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston. Welcome. We have Jill and Edgar. And Jill, I guess I'll kick it off to you, or
good afternoon.
Rippin. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee, Ripin Bhatia, Senior Engineer with Office of Transportation. So today we are introducing you the refinements of the concepts for the grade separation project at Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston. And this is an initial review and feedback that we're looking for. We do have staff from Caltrain, project management team, Jill Gibson and Edgar Torres. They both have very technical expertise and worked on development of the community engagement plan. So they have been collaborating with City and Caltrain and our consultants to manage these projects. Next slide, please. So we like to note that these are draft plans for the Rail Committee's initial review, and staff is seeking this initial feedback and considerations, and we aren't expecting any decisions to be made at this meeting. This is probably a platform that we are looking for more engagement and communications to our community for these opportunities, and also to update the committee and our community of the upcoming meetings and decisions that are planned. Next slide, please. We'll just go through our introduction of our refined concepts and technical studies that we have taken to date, and also initial considerations and the details of the concepts, and we'll also share the next steps. Next slide, please. So the project involves design at the 3 crossing, which is Churchill, which includes Seal Avenue as a bicycle and pedestrian crossing for partial underpass alternative, which is the selected preferred alternative by the council, and also looking at Meadow Crossing and Charleston crossings. Next slide, please. So our timeline, as we have previously also, brought in here, is that we would like to get a decision to move forward with alternatives to design, the 15% design by the end of this year. We are currently looking at the concept plans and seeking feedback, and we'll be doing community engagement in the upcoming months. We'll follow up with the 15% design and then complete the 35% design through the rest of the 26 and 27 year. Next slide, please. So just reiterating council's motion and direction that have selected preferred alternative of partial underpass at Churchill Avenue with the pedestrian and bicycle crossing, which is at an offset location on Seal Avenue, and also including the bicycle pedestrian crossing only and with the street closure as a backup for Churchill Avenue. For Meadow Drive and Charleston Road, the City Council has already advanced hybrid and underpass alternatives to the preliminary engineering and environmental phase. Council also requested and kind of wanted to see an opportunity at about 15% level of design to see if we can reduce our options or focus our energy on one option to move forward into the next phase of the design. Next slide, please. Just illustrating the different alternatives that were selected and for our refined concepts for Meadow Drive, Hybrid, and Underpass, Meadow and Charleston, sorry. And for Churchill Avenue, the locally preferred alternative is the partial underpass, and those are being looked at for refinements. Next slide, please. Council has tasked us to, as part of these refinements, to ensure that we can look into improving safety, improve mobility, and minimize traffic congestion, improve traffic circulation. Also looking at to see how we could minimize any potential private property impacts. Therefore, the project could be established with a small footprint, which can be used for environmental clearances, both from federal and state levels. Next slide, please. So now I'll hand it over to Edgar Torres, who will be helping us with the technical details on the refined concepts and technical analysis. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Edgar Torres here on behalf of Caltrain Engineering and Design Oversight. With regards to recent technical activities, we have it under 3 buckets, and all very important to be able to understand how these concepts can progress. First are the existing conditions, understanding the topographical requirements. So think of the surface. Geotechnical exploration, think of what's the ground can actually support and be able to do in that space. And then also, very importantly, the existing utilities. As when you start moving dirt, you start looking for and trying to avoid utilities where possible, and we're not having to relocate them. And what that means, both for services to the citizens and the region writ large for some of the larger utilities. From a technical analysis, we have been working on the multimodal and circulation analysis to be able to understand how these grade separations can support mobility and circulation, and be able to validate the prior work that was done by the city. Some drainage and stormwater analysis, as water likes to find spots, and we got to be able to get it out of the way to have safe operations. In terms of design development, these are 3 key pieces of data that we use. First is the basis of design, understanding what are the parameters by which the grade separations are being designed. Second, the ability to construct, in other words, constructability of those grade separations, what that means from a railroad operations, what that means from traffic operations, and how to be able to provide that space for the contractor to be able to do that work in the context of neighborhoods. And then third is the risk register or risk identification and management, being able to identify those key concerns and be able to address them either by avoidance, by mitigation, or incorporation into the project through design features. Next slide, please. From a multimodal and circulation analysis, we conducted new traffic counts in May of 2025 of this year. And so we were able to look at not only traffic, pedestrian, and cyclists, being able to understand what those patterns are, how it's changed from the previous time they were collected prior to COVID, and to be able to say that the traffic patterns effectively have been stable. In other words, no growth, and in some cases reduction in the amount of traffic for some of those traffic movements, those turning movements to be more specific. So we assessed the network to see how has that changed. Are there any signal timing changes that have occurred that we need to understand? The different patterns, for the most part, fairly stable, and we again assess that. And so we identified opportunities, looked for opportunities to be able to essentially look at how different configurations of the road and intersections can be able to help reduce potential property impacts and identify opportunities for operational improvements at the intersections. And what I can state from that analysis that all the alternatives improve upon the existing conditions through 2040. So we did grow the traffic volumes more conservatively than fact of no growth, right? From 2020 to now has been effectively no growth. So we did grow those volumes and assess that the alternatives can all serve that demand at a reasonable level of service. Some of them show better operational improvements than others, and I'll get into that during the presentation. One thing I want to state is that the work that the city had done prior to the project being a transition to Caltrain really helped identify the trade-offs and some of the key circulation concerns that were able to be addressed during the initial concept development, which is very helpful and made the work of the integrated team much easier to look for those opportunities to refine the concepts. Next slide, please. So, with regards to the concepts, the top three are similar to what Ripon had identified in terms of the partial underpass at Churchill, hybrid, and underpasses at Meadow and Charleston. The orange boxes below identify some of the opportunities that we had identified both from reading the prior work that was provided by the XCAP and some of the community concerns associated with some of the improvements, as well as alternatives for addressing the circulation improvements with while minimizing potential property impacts. That was, again, the direction provided by City Council, and so we took that as part of our mission. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to come back in November to be able to decide which of these advance into 15% drawings such that they can be assessed in more detail from a design perspective, cost, schedule, constructability, and be able to advance into the next phase of work. Next slide, please. Churchill Avenue and Seal. So this is a pair for, again, context. Next slide. For context, this Churchill Avenue is a partial underpass. It is partial because it creates sort of two intersections. One is the lower Alma, which is a T intersection highlighted in light blue. And then the other section, which is no longer signalized, would be Churchill Avenue and Upper Alma, which is on the purple on the upper part of the page. In this case, as part of the traffic analysis, we were able to identify an opportunity to be able to have Alma in the northbound direction be two lanes, one under lower Alma and the other in upper Alma. This provided the opportunity to be able to reduce the potential property impacts on the east side of Alma Street for those properties that are fronting Alma there. So that was an opportunity. We were also acknowledging that there were comments from the public during previous phases about concerns about the landscape planting strip potentially being removed. And so we explored the opportunity to be able to have that planting strip between the sidewalk and the roadway, a little bit more buffer between pedestrians and traffic on Alma Street, and looked for what that meant in terms of potential property impacts on the residents to the east, as well as Caltrain to the west. Next slide, please. So this is a cross-section, in this case, showing without the landscape strip. This shows, for the most part, most, if not all, of the roadway improvements within the existing 70-foot right-of-way. And so the retaining wall itself shown, highlighted there as retaining wall to the left of the tracks. That's within Caltrain right away, but the surface is fully available for Caltrain's use. So in this case, it allows for Alma Street to have Upper Alma at 20 feet. Notice that it is 20 feet. That is through the coordination done by the integrated team, city staff with the fire department to understand what the needs would be to be able to respond to residences along Alma, Churchill, and Kellogg. So this allows for the ability to be able to have a fire truck access those homes or be able to respond if necessary. They will be striped, and you'll see in a rendering here shortly, striped to be able to have traffic be in a specific location while allowing, again, response by the fire department. Next slide, please. In this case, you'll see a very small difference, but there is a 4.5-foot planting strip in between the sidewalk and the 20-foot lane of Upper Alma Street on the left-hand side. So this is an opportunity to be able to do low-lying shrubs, still be able to potentially put, for example, waste bins or recycling bins there for trash collection. So we looked for opportunities to be able to introduce that planting strip. Also, actually in this case, it's not an if, the electrical poles that exist today on the east side of Alma Street will need to be relocated. And so there is an opportunity, one, to be able to relocate them in the 4.5-foot planting strip. also the opportunity to coordinate with city staff and the utilities department for undergrounding that electrical. And that's something that we can explore as the design progresses to see how those power lines could be undergrounded along Upper Alma Street. Next slide, please. And this is a rendering, in this case, showing without the landscape strip of Upper Alma, the intersection of Lower Alma and Churchill, and then the undercrossing of Churchill underneath the railroad tracks, reflecting the 2 lanes going northbound, one along Upper Alma, one along Lower Alma. Next slide, please. With regards to Seal Avenue, so per the council's direction was to further assess and look at the opportunities for a pedestrian and bike crossing at Seal Avenue. Please note that actually, if you go back one slide, please. Please note that there are no pedestrian or bicycle facilities that are designated for bikes and peds along Churchill at that partial underpass. Now, roadway cyclists would still be able to utilize the crossing. So if they're comfortable in that roadway cycling environment, then they'd be able to utilize Lower Alma to go along Churchill and then come up on the west side of the tracks. Next slide. So at Seal Avenue, there are 2 concepts that were explored. One was having a pedestrian and bike ramp down the middle of Seal Avenue. And this is the east ramp is centered along it. There is a tunnel that would go underneath both Alma and the rail tracks, acknowledging that Alma Street is a high volume street and be able to provide that safe environment for cyclists. And note, because we do not have the bike ped connection at Churchill, which is the primary connection to Pali, this becomes the primary connection for bikes and peds to Pali from the east side of the tracks to the west side. And so the west ramp in this case would come up from the tracks and then climb up to Park Boulevard and Stanford Avenue. This would remove on-street parking on Seal Avenue in order to be able to provide a 16-foot lane for fire access along Seal Avenue. And there may be potential partial property acquisition along Seal to be able to accommodate the ramp. Next slide. So this is what rendering of this. This is very similar to what was previously conceived along Kellogg. Next slide. And in this case, it's a section showing that ramp down the middle of Seal Avenue. And it may need to be shifted one way or another. We're showing 1.5 feet of potential property acquisition on either side, about 1.5 feet. That may shift depending on utilities. So there's still utility investigation to confirm and what potential changes in utilities may be necessary. Next slide. The second option that was assessed as part of the Seal Avenue bike ped crossing was along Alma Street, adjacent to the intersection of Seal and Alma. So this ramp would go along Alma, go down into the tunnel that's shown in yellow, and then climb back up on the north side of Pierce Park to be able to connect to the to Castleja Avenue.
And this is a new alternative that you developed. Is that correct? That wasn't part of this?
So both of them are actually new. The Seal Avenue crossing was at least identified as a crossing, but was not analyzed in terms of where those crossing connections would be.
But we had a concept that it was potentially down the center, whereas this one parallel to Alma is an entirely new concept.
Correct. Yes, that is accurate. So this was intended to see where there was potential space and be able to reduce the potential impacts to private property. And so this ramp does have 2 locations that may need, likely need private property. One is a few feet along Alma Street, where there's a multifamily to the north of Seal Avenue. Second is a triangle wedge adjacent to Pierce Park and the Caltrain right-of-way. And so we're already aware that there may be potential right-of-way or potential property acquisitions or impacts.
You indicated that it's about 1.5 feet with the other alternative. Can you just approximate?
On each side, this is about a couple feet. In fact, the next slide, please. Actually, I have renderings before we get to the section. This is what it would roughly look like from an aerial view or bird's eye view, showing the ramp from Seal down along Alma down, and then the ramp coming up to Castilleja. Next slide. This is on the north side of Pierce Park to be able to show that connection. One of the things that we were aware of that Park and Castilleja are part of the bike network that's been identified by the city. And so that's a sign there showing the directions to the high school. Next slide. And then the ramp along Alma Street, providing that connection across Alma and the tracks. The next slide here shows the section, and to answer your question directly, the approximately 2 feet that may be needed. Now there's a few options here that we can explore to be able to further reduce it. However, as part of this process, we want to be able to identify the potential impacts and disclose that as part of the design process, so that when the environmental clearance process is started, we've identified that for the public. Next slide. With regards to the traffic analysis at Churchill, so here we're showing the AM and PM peak intersection delays and the level of service associated with that. So with regards to Alma Street, it's showing 30 seconds and 40 seconds in the AM PM peak respectively, level of service C and D. Now, that's the average delay at the intersection. In the PM peak, the northbound left, in other words, you're going northbound on Alma and making a left across the tracks, that current delay is approximately 115 seconds. And so that is what people are experiencing, especially when the preemption is activated by the presence of a train. In the partial underpass, that in the future, by the way, with the growth, with estimated growth, that gets reduced to 26 to 27 seconds for that northbound left. So it's a substantive improvement in how people experience that crossing, being able to get across the tracks. So that's another point of validation of the work that was done by the city prior to this being handed off to Caltrain. Next is Meadow and Charleston. Oh, sorry, pardon me.
Let's just see if there are any other questions before we lose our thought process on Churchill.
I have a quick one, which is, how is delay measured?
So delay is effectively modeled. So one of the tools that we utilize is Synchro. We model that to see how the signal timing is today. We code that in. We validate that timing based on delays that were observed in the field. And then we circle back with staff as well to confirm that that is consistent with what the city has observed. And then we go ahead and model how much that delay is at each approach.
I needed a little bit more basic. I'm still not understanding what delay is.
Well,
The amount of time I sit there waiting,
Sitting at the red.
sitting at the red.
The number of seconds waiting at the red.
So when it is red, how long does a car wait before it gets through?
Correct.
Even if there's a train, not a train?
Exactly.
Okay.
On
All right.
On average.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then just one concern is that with having a bike ped crossing at Seal, and then students would go to Castilleja.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, students come often from Park and then to Castilleja, but this would increase the number of students who would be crossing there. My understanding from some of the city improvements that have occurred on Churchill, we don't really have protections at where Castilleja crosses into the Pali parking lot, because under, I think, PUC rules, it's so adjacent to the tracks that they restrict our ability to have those protections. And I think that that's an issue that we need to look at addressing in parallel with this, so that we don't get down the path and go, we have an insurmountable issue. I know that Mike Meter has worked with the PUC on a number of things, then that they've been expediting responses and having more accommodation than maybe historically. But that doesn't mean they would allow us to do what we might feel we want and need to do there. So that's important. And I just did want to note too that we have these delays and we see these potentially significant improvements at Churchill. I anticipate that that will not necessarily be the outcome because drivers will say, well, now Churchill is faster than going to Embarcadero. And so there'll be some new equilibrium. I'd expect there'd be an improvement at both because of this. But it wouldn't all accrue to Churchill. Drivers are smart and they figure it out. So, okay.
Yeah, excellent point. It will rebalance.
Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple quick ones if we're going to go back to where we started. Like you, I guess, I was surprised that there's no changes to traffic as you forecast. What assumptions did you make in terms of modeling on population growth?
So we did consult not only with city but VTA staff with regards to the model that the county is currently utilizing. We were a little bit more conservative in the traffic demand. So not necessarily just population driven, but just saying there's going to be an increase of traffic of 1% a year for the next 15 years. That's more conservative than what's been observed, even with back to work environment changing. Conservatively high, correct. And so we were wanting to be more conservative just to be able to stress test the concepts.
Okay. When I looked at these maps, I couldn't find a picture, nor did I see it on your slide, of where the landscaping was there that you took out. And
yeah,
you can show me the slide or something. But what are you feeling like the impact is there? You're just getting a little bit more land, and therefore there's no or almost no impact on the existing housing land, the distant private property.
So in this case, it would be up to 2 feet of private property potentially needing to be acquired.
Okay, so I heard you say that. So that's due to the landscape.
Yes,
the strip
if
coming up.
there was no landscape strip, yeah, if we can go back to let's go back to slide 14, please.
Yeah, that's what I have.
And can you contrast what the property impacts are to what was in the previous proposal last year?
Yes, as part of the improvements as previously conceived, it had 2 lanes in Upper Alma.
That was the next question I was just going to ask.
Yes.
Because that's very significant.
Yes, which did have both private property impacts and further encroachment to Caltrain right away. At that point, it was 3.5 feet on Caltrain right away. And I apologize. I will have to revert back to my resource. 4 feet? 4 feet. 4 feet onto 4 feet on the private property side.
So say that again now.
So 3.5 feet on the Caltrain side was in the previous concept. It was 3.5 feet on Caltrain, 4 feet on the private property. And so by being able to look at the traffic analysis and reduce to 1 lane on Upper Alma, that allowed us to at least identify a concept that was wholly within the city's right of way. Now, the planning strip came from the fact that as we heard from previous meetings and from previous documentation, the ability to create some separation of the sidewalk with the roadway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my 3.
Just 2 other factors for everybody to know. For northbound traffic, you would no longer have a signal at Churchill. So traffic would flow, would get choked down to 1 lane in the northbound direction at this point, rather than waiting until the Embarcadero overpass. But we have, if you're going southbound on Alma, the ability to make a left turn. Well, actually, sorry, if you're going westbound, excuse me, so many things. Eastbound Churchill, you can't cross any longer. So cars, if they want to get into Old Palo Alto, they need to turn right. And there's been a discussion about the possibility of a signal in that area, perhaps at Cal Ave, that would both give a safe entrance and exit from that neighborhood, but also calm down some of the speeding that occurs on Alma. So I just wanted to note that. And then the other thing is what we're seeing right now is not yet the 15% engineering. It's the work you've done so far toward the 15%. And so the improvements we've had, and it's pretty significant reductions in potential property impacts and other design refinements. It's very possible that we will see other improvements at 15% and 30%. And then lastly, you mentioned we've greatly reduced the impact on private property and on Caltrain. The negotiation with Caltrain on ability to intrude into their right-of-way is still something that is unresolved. You haven't assumed a significant intrusion, either here or down at Charleston Meadow, but that's not off the table, correct?
That is accurate. The ability to be able to, at least as part of the design process, consider Caltrain property is on the table.
Thank you. But that's not assumed in your designs yet. Those are they're potentially greater improvements that if you got that latitude.
In this case, we will actually show a concept that does show further encroachment in Charleston. And so that is something that we'll be able to demonstrate here in a moment.
Could I respond to an earlier question?
Yes.
Are you done with your response?
At least in Churchill, yes.
Could we move to the previous slide? Oh, sorry. No, what slide number is this one?
Oh, the rendering? 16.
So you had asked about Castellea and Churchill earlier. So for this alternative, there's no pedestrian and bicycle access across Alma. But what you can see on this is that there is actually pedestrian bicycle access across Churchill near the tracks. So they could kind of go around that way and then get onto Mariposa instead of going on Castellea without having to.
Okay, so it's one possibility is to loop there.
You pointed out with the cursor.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe
So
not. So
bikers would go from Castellea out to Churchill, take this bike and ped overpass,
Yeah.
and then loop back to campus.
Yes, so right next to the tracks, there's that ped bike crossing there.
Actually, I thought that the issue was that the CPUC won't let you have something so close. But if you were to build this, then there is actually no longer a crossing that
Correct.
CPUC involves. So actually you would fix Castellea and put the bollards in at Castellea and let the students go across that way, because you would end up removing what is now in place. So we're fixing the issue by building the grade separation.
So we may open the door for the PUC.
You most surely would, because you would no longer have a crossing that involves PUC, CPUC, because it's already up. It stays at grade and the road is now dipped, so it's not touching anymore. So CPUC is not involved.
Yeah, so in the future, when we have a grade separation, we can do anything at that Castellea Churchill. But currently, because of the queuing effect, they would have a review comments. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have an additional follow-up on that. Edgar, you said, I think it was you who said, thank you for your presentation so far. You talked about the behavior of cyclists and how you said road cyclists could still use Lower Alma to northbound Lower Alma to make a left-hand turn onto Churchill.
Correct.
By road cyclists, do you mean bicyclists or do you mean motorcycles?
No, so I do
Okay,
mean bicyclists.
I just want to be clear.
Yes.
Okay, so what is to prevent thousands of Pali students from becoming these road cyclists that we're hoping to divert through a tunnel farther south? What is, Pat said motorists find a way, and he's totally right. So do kids on bikes. So how do we not set ourselves up for that inevitability?
So that is already an item that's been identified that we would want to explore with the city and the community to be able to understand what design changes may be necessary, whether road cyclists are going to be allowed or not allowed. The current assumption is that they would be allowed. And then the second would be working through an education campaign on safe paths, safe routes to school. So that is all part of a process. There's no exact answer now, but that would be working collaboratively with the community to be able to identify how the designs may need to be adjusted to address that concern.
If I could just add, there's also a unique thing that you can't see in any of the pictures that we have, but Embarcadero runs at an angle. So the way that Seal, Embarcadero, and Alma work, it creates a triangle. So the number of students who might be tempted to go that way is basically just the people who live in that triangle north of Seal. And they actually have a different option, which is they could go north, they could go to Embarcadero and go under the Embarcadero grade separation. They don't know it, they don't do it now because they have Churchill, but that's really the people that would be tempted to do that. And what it would require as a cyclist, because I live in that neighborhood, is you would have to come out onto Alma, and now you'd have to make your way to the center lane that goes down, which is not an easy thing to do in the middle of traffic. So I think it despite the fact that it's always a temptation in their kids, I think there hopefully is a way that we could engineer that, but I just want to explain that that is really just a function of the students that live in that triangle.
All right. We'll continue with Meadow Charleston, slide 27, please. Actually, yeah. So just a brief summary in terms of the initial considerations. When we looked at the landscape strip, there are quite a few properties along Alma Street. So there's 16 to 18 partial acquisitions to be able to accommodate that landscape strip. Without the landscape strip, then it's effectively limited to only the corner properties, the 6 corner properties, in order to be able to allow for the ADA improvements. Those are ADA required ramp improvements. And then at Seal Avenue, as part of the Seal Avenue ramp, there's 14 to 16 partial acquisitions. It would remove the on-street parking. And then Alma Street would be 3 to 4 partial acquisitions as part of that concept. Now on to Meadow and Charleston. The next slide, please. One of the things that we wanted to at least bring to the attention of the Rail Committee is that there is, as part of the reading, not only documentation, but also prior materials, was that the underpasses and the hybrid were effectively envisioned as a pair. Both are underpasses or both are hybrid. And one question we had, because we wanted to explore the possibility of having one built differently or at different time than another, understanding construction impacts, having both crossings closed at the same time would be a challenge from a community circulation perspective. We explored the idea of a combination. In other words, where one is a hybrid and the other is an underpass. And to be able to see what that potentially could unlock, we're still in the evaluation phase of this, but wanted to at least share with the community that that is part of the constructability workshops that are being undertaken as part of this project. Next slide, please. With regards to the Meadow hybrid, Meadow Drive hybrid, and this is for the group certification, this is where the rails are elevated. So the rails are brought up and the roadway is slightly depressed. And in this case, we looked at trying to create a band of potential solutions of this, where Meadow Drive is lowered 4 to 6 feet and the tracks are elevated 17 to 19 feet. So think of the 4 feet with the 19 and the 17 with the 6 to be able to create where the potential solutions could be in terms of the track and the road. As part of the refinement here, we looked at opportunities for operational improvements at the intersection with dedicated left turn lanes, also be able to provide protected bike facilities, in other words, bike boxes or protected bike lanes, and even considering bike signals for a phase to be able to cross Alma Street on its own phase. And then in this concept, there has been, at least as part of the current concept, no potential private property acquisitions. Next slide, please. With regards to the concept refinement for the underpass, a few items here to bring to the committee's attention. One is the reduction of the multi-use path width. It was originally, and I'm going to see if I can have the cursor work through here. Excellent. So you see this pink band that goes all the way along the south side of Meadow. That was originally laid out as a 20-foot multi-use path, and we have explored for that to be down to 14 feet. This allows 5 feet of for each direction of the bike, so 10 feet, 5 feet in one direction, 5 feet in the other, plus 4 foot sidewalk or pedestrian space to be able to also meet ADA. And so that ramp, underpass for the pedestrians and cyclists go all the way from one end to the other. We also checked the ability for larger vehicles to be able to navigate some of these turns, and specifically the northbound left here. So part of how this concept was designed is that the ramps are coming from the north. So southbound comes down into Meadow and then allowed for a left and a right at an intersection down below. And then for coming off of Meadow, being able to go up a ramp to northbound Alma. So any northbound traffic would need to be able to come along to an intersection, a signalized intersection, and be able to make a left at this ramp to be able to go down to East Meadow. That turn, based on the current design, would effectively restrict that turn to only passenger vehicles or private vehicles. It would not be, it's challenging for delivery vehicles or larger trucks to be able to make that maneuver. So we are looking to be able to potentially reconfigure that intersection to allow for larger vehicles to be able to make that U-turn onto that southbound ramp.
Say that again, where's the U-turn?
The U-turn is Alma Village, right at the northbound here, signal here. Yeah, so.
You can see that in one of the materials, so I wasn't sure if it was.
Yeah. So it's there. So we're looking to be able to reconfigure the geometry here to be able to create more space for a larger vehicle to be able to make that turn and down.
But if you do, is that taking out more property?
Right now, no, it would be repurposing lanes. In other words, can northbound Alma go down to one lane? Can the right turn lane be removed? So we're working and exploring on those options.
I mean, not it's a plus and a minus getting rid of those big vehicles. You know, if you get rid of them, you're not going to be as congested because they move more slowly.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
And that's acknowledging that Alma Street is the designated truck route for the city.
Just as a point of clarification, if the trucks couldn't make that turn, right now that is for vehicles that are traveling north on Alma and trying to get into the neighborhood north of Meadow, correct? Potentially a truck route could alternate to turn on Charleston and then it goes into the neighborhood through Park or any of the other streets. In other words, yeah.
Yes.
So it's not a complete blockade. It just means that there would be routing differences.
It would be a new route for that path.
I think that's an excellent point, that this U-turn is actually potentially a deterrent. It does impact the people who live between Charleston and Meadow, which to Nadia's point of the triangle on Sealed on that tunnel. This is a small group of people who live between Charleston and Meadow, but everybody else who lives below Charleston would be incentivized to come Charleston into the west neighborhoods. So that needs to be taken into consideration for the traffic patterns. You may really reduce those left-hand turns on Meadow, which are now huge number of bikes come to Gun on this Meadow route. And so maybe we disincentivize cars and we end up with all bikes. Okay.
The next slide highlights what that looks like in a rendering, very similar to what was previously presented to the Rail Committee. Next slide. Oh, yes, thank you, Nadia. Can you go back one slide? So one of the things that we did explore as part of the refinement and working with the fire department is when streets are closed, in other words, you'll see Park Boulevard here effectively cul-de-sac. It is, in this case, being able to ensure that fire department can be able to respond to those homes and be able to still be able to turn their apparatuses or their vehicles around. So that's an important item that we are coordinating with the fire department. And we are going through that refinement, and that will be a continuous dialogue with city services to ensure that things can happen. That includes, for example, trash collection and other utilities. Next slide. So for the Charleston Road hybrid, in this case, Similar to Meadow, we looked for a band of solutions to be able to have flexibility in the design, but also understand where the footprint could be. And similar to Meadow, no potential property acquisitions as part of the hybrid. So minimal refinement in this location, mostly some small adjustments to where the lanes are placed, but the same similar intersection design was previously identified. Next slide. Now comes some of the key changes that were done as part of the work by the integrated team. The first is with regards to the Charleston Road underpass, and this has been dubbed the roundabout concept because it had the roundabout to the east of Alma Street, quite a distance from the crossing. In this case, through the traffic analysis, the assessment was able to identify that the roundabout could be reduced from 2 lanes down to 1 to see if that could be, again, that footprint. That's first. Second, it actually helped with the ability to be able to provide a safer approach into the roundabouts. So in the previous concept, it had 2 lanes going into the roundabout that required a weave. In other words, one set of cars having to go into the other lane, the other, if they're going through, having to merge to the right. In this concept, it allows for a merge and then so slowing traffic down before entering into the roundabout and then coming back around. Now, as part of the reduction, it was intended to see if we could essentially remove the potential acquisition of those 2 properties. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the roundabout, it would require either way, those 2 properties would need to be acquired because there isn't a way to be able to safely connect those driveways into the roundabout. And in fact, you would normally avoid having a roundabout going into driveways without specific design, and that would effectively impact the buildings themselves within those parcels. We reduced the right-of-way width to be able to, on the north side, in this case, you see the pink band on the north side of Charleston. So that was reduced to be able to stay as much as possible within the city's existing right-of-way. This concept still requires full property acquisitions and partial acquisitions as part of that roundabout.
Did you look at other places for the roundabout?
We did. So we looked at the ability to shift that roundabout to the north because there appears to be larger backyards on the north side. We also looked at the ability to put that roundabout in Mumford. It did not reduce the amount of acquisitions associated with the concepts. And that was the primary question was, can we reduce or eliminate the property acquisitions as directed by the city council? So because of those results, we said, what is driving the need for the roundabout? And one of those key drivers is the demand from the south along northbound Alma, wanting to make the left to Charleston, as you pointed out. Councilmember Haynes. Let's count Haynes. I need some water.
You've been talking a while. Good stuff. Yeah.
So as part of that demand, we said, what are ways in which we can accommodate that demand? So in this concept, I'm going to venture to see if I can zoom in. I may not be able to, but that's okay. In this concept, we have a right turn lane showing here to be able to make that turn onto Charleston to be able to go through the roundabout. The demand was so high, it required a right turn lane. So we said, what if there was a way to be able to shift that right turn lane and turn it into a left turn lane in a combined ramp with the ramp that's shown here in blue? This is the eastbound Charleston to southbound Alma. And so that came, next slide, please. That resulted in what we call next slide. That resulted in what we call the direct access ramp from Alma down to Charleston. So in this light blue, you see 2 lanes. One lane in this upper corner, one lane is able to make that right turn to go onto southbound Alma. And then the left turn lane from northbound Alma onto Charleston. effectively accommodating the high demand movement that is observed at that crossing. So what that allowed us to do was to be able to remove the roundabout and the potential property impacts associated with that roundabout. It's able to address the circulation needed. Now, one thing that we have identified is that there is demand to be able to go southbound on Alma to westbound on Charleston. This intersection at Mumford is being designed to be able to accommodate a U-turn for that demand. It's a lower demand, and so it's this intersection there would be able to accommodate that U-turn. And this is a way to be able to effectively eliminate full property acquisitions to the east of the intersection of Alma and Charleston. There are still some full acquisitions needed adjacent to the underpass on the west side of the tracks, and then potential partial property acquisitions along Alma Street. Next slide.
Could you, I'm sorry, just go to the inset there at the top right. That is a complete copy of, it's just a blow up version, the exact same direction as what we see on the big map.
So this is now two intersections, one at the upper Alma that you see in the plan view.
There's an upper Alma and a lower Alma to this.
And now there's going to be Charleston with the lower Alma, the ramp coming down. Okay. And that's this intersection that's effectively below that bridge deck.
Okay. That's why there's only the possibility of turning left. If you're coming northbound on Alma, there's a left-hand turn lane, right?
Correct.
And
if you wanted to make the right turn,
you'd only go down there if you're trying to go left.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, the rendering, I believe, helps put that into context in terms of where that. So you have upper Alma here at the bridge deck, being able to make those turning movements. So if you're on Charleston and you want to get to, if you're on westbound Charleston and you want to get to Alma Street, you'd be able to come up to the intersection, make a left or a right. If you are on northbound Alma and you wanted to go to the east side of Alma, you'd be able to continue as you do today, make a right turn onto Charleston and continue east. If you're looking to go west of the tracks along westbound Charleston, you come down the ramp, make the left turn at the signalized intersection down below. So you don't see the signals because they're underneath the bridge deck. So this allows for a two-level intersection. It allows for a much more efficient operation while reducing, again, property impacts to the east of Alma. Yeah, it's very similar to Churchill in terms of that T intersection coming down.
And the bikes and peds coming to westbound to West Charleston would take what route?
So
tell me from all three directions, please.
So if say they're along Charleston, they'd be able to come up here.
I'm looking at the opposite, coming from East Charleston to West, or coming from either side of Alma. So I'm thinking about Gunn High School traffic in the morning.
Yeah, if you see the green band here, that's a multi-use path on the north side of Charleston. So it comes down underneath Alma, underneath the tracks, and then it comes back up here where the cyclist can continue onto the street that connects to westbound Charleston, or they can go along the Ped Bike Bridge here to be able to continue onto Park Boulevard or to the communities to the south. And then same vice versa. So there is a fully dedicated active transportation connection. If you go back one slide again, that starts all the way east at Mumford. And so that protected facility would start as far east as Mumford and be able to continue to the south. And Wright Place would have a direct connection there as well for cyclists and pedestrians to be able to go across and then to the west.
So for anybody living in this sort of lower southern west quadrant, coming, say, from a San Antonio up to Gunn, they've really got to get out to Mumford, or they've got to sort of come out and to get on a bike. They've got to sort of enter onto this East Charleston. Is that right?
We can explore with city staff what that potential bike path would be and how to be able to, again, this would be coordinated as well with some of the current active transportation studies.
Just want to remind us that we're looking at, thousands of new housing units in that portion of the city, and who knows how many high school students will be living there, but we do expect an increase in population in this region.
Thank you. We will definitely include that as part of our documentation. Next slide. Next one. So in terms of the traffic assessment for Meadow Drive, the underpass performs better from a traffic perspective than the hybrid. The hybrid still has the opportunity to be able to provide connections for cyclists, as we mentioned, not only bike boxes, but potential bike signals at that location. But from a traffic delay, in other words, how much time people wait at a red signal, it is much more operationally efficient with regards to the underpass. And that's the case for both AM and PM peaks. For the Charleston Road concept, next slide, please. So we looked at all three. We looked at the hybrid, the underpass with the roundabout, and the underpass with the direct access ramp. In this case, the hybrid, again, in the existing, still able to perform well. But in the future, there are, because of the higher demands that are anticipated, it does start having challenges with what we call level of service F, or higher delays again into the future. The underpass with the roundabout and a direct access ramp both operate well. In other words, they are able to have better operations for the traffic. However, the direct access ramp performs better overall and reduces those potential property impacts. And finally, in terms of the initial considerations, both hybrids do not have potential property acquisitions, at least as currently documented with county parcel maps. We are proceeding with title report research to be able to understand exactly where those property lines are so that we can state definitively that there is no potential property impact and confirm it as part of the 15% drawings. Then as part of the underpasses at Meadow, it's 1 to 4 full property acquisitions and 6 to 9 partial. And then at underpass, the roundabout is 3 full with 23 to 25 partial. And then finally, underpass direct access ramp, 1 full and 21 to 23 partial.
And I'm sorry, did you contrast it to what it was before you got started on this?
I don't have those numbers right away, but we can come back and provide a written response to that question.
Next slide, please. So our 4-month look ahead is to have a community meeting on September 30th for both Meadow, Charleston, and Churchill Avenue crossings, and receive community feedback and input. And we will then plan to synthesize all those comments and revise appropriately to bring back a updated, refined concepts for rail community review and recommendations to the City Council on the November meeting on November 18th. And hopefully we can get direction to the City Council and seek their decision on advancing 1 or 2 concepts to the 15% on the December 8th. Next slide. Just reiterating and bringing this slide up for community information that we do have a community meeting for input and feedback on September 30th, so 4 to 6 p.m. for Meadow Charleston and 6 to 8 p.m. for Churchill Avenue and Steel Avenue. So next slide. You can go to the city's website using that QR code. We would like to seek any comments and feedback. And if we do have a comment and feedback form on our project website, we would welcome any comments at any time, but we will like to see if we can synthesize all the comments that we received before October 17th for our next rail committee meeting. So that concludes our staff report. Thank you.
Thank you for a really thorough report and a lot of progress. The issues that you're still working on step by step, you're at a certain point in time, and then between now and the 15% design completion, remind us again when 15% is anticipated to be done?
That would be essentially the end of second quarter next year, May, June timeframe to come back to Rail Committee.
And do you anticipate any other refinements between now and when it comes back to this committee or gets to the council, or is this pretty much what we're going to be looking at?
In terms, we do anticipate additional information in terms of constructability at the November Rail Committee. However, as part of the construction schedule and updated cost estimate, that would be as part of the 15% drawings early next year.
And any potential negotiation with Caltrain on being able to use more of their right of way, that would be done when, do you think? Or is that just an ongoing, no real clear point in time?
That would be an ongoing process, and still identifying where that property may be needed and then assessing it with both Caltrain staff and city staff from a railroad operation perspective and a roadway operation perspective. It's the nature of the integrated delivery team that's been established for this project that allows for that dialogue to be continuous.
And just to refresh everybody, up until, I don't know, a little over a year ago, we had a real issue on where Caltrain would be required to, they were required to establish passing tracks at several different locations on the corridor for the possibility of future high-speed rail, not necessarily the inevitability, but they were legally required to do that based on their agreements with high-speed rail. That zone they did establish, which would be from just south of somewhere between just south of Churchill and just north of Meadow, not necessarily that entire distance. And so now the Churchill intersection and the Charleston and Meadow intersections, Caltrain no longer needs to reserve that for 4 tracks. They may have other reasons why they are hesitant to give up any of the right-of-way, but it's no longer that big issue of do they have to accommodate 4 tracks, which needs even more space, especially at Churchill, that is only 65 feet right-of-way versus down at Meadow and Charleston, it's about 120 plus or minus.
It's 100 feet.
100.
Yes,
Okay.
100 feet.
So more room down at Meadow and Charleston. And so I just wanted to kind of lay that out there. That doesn't determine what's going to happen with those negotiations, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have even fewer property impacts, in part because of design refinements, and in part perhaps because of being able to intrude on the right-of-way in some key locations.
Yeah, and those concepts are being explored, and it's none of those are foreclosed. That's an important item as part of the collaborative nature between city and Caltrain. The other part I would say is that there's still more information to be gathered, especially around utilities and constructability, because those 2 pieces of information will help inform how things get built and if there's additional impacts that may be necessary either on Caltrain or private property. As more information is gathered, then we come back to the Rail Committee and the community about those implications.
Great. Shall we hear from the public? Okay. How many speakers do we have?
To the chair, we have 7 speakers.
We have to get to the second item, so I'd like to limit it to 2 minutes per speaker. We're going to be tight as it is, so let's go forward.
Our first speaker is Eric N.
Slides.
Is that for the first?
Yes.
That's it. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Eric Nordman. Next slide. Thank you for showing listing out the number of partial and full acquisitions. That wasn't on the original documentation, but it is on the slides today. Thank you. Next slide. On the Seal Avenue, Alma Street ramp option, I thought this was an interesting concept that minimizes the property acquisitions on Seal. The retaining wall section along Alma appears to be about 161 feet, and this may not be even enough for an 8-foot tall tunnel, assuming a 7% grade. If the ramp continues dropping in the tunnel as it rounds the bend, that might allow a long enough ramp. And I think that might be a possibility. On the west side, it seemed to me that it made sense to have the tunnel stop at the Caltrains right away. That building a tunnel beyond that seemed just extra expense. Next slide. On the Seal Avenue ramp, the tunnel extends about 66 feet beyond Alma Street. Some extension is desirable for turning things, for turning radiuses, but it seemed excessive. I didn't quite understand why it needed to be so long. Next slide. On the Charleston Avenue underpass, the roundabout design, previously this required a 2-lane roundabout, and I didn't understand what had changed. On the tunnel seemed excessively wide on the south side, and this seems likely to cause the loss of the adjacent house during jackbox construction, so that whole bridge needs to be assembled to the west and then pushed in underneath to do that. A radius is provided for all car turning lanes. I saw that you had put radiuses on the renderings, so thank you for doing that.
This concludes your time.
What?
This concludes your time.
Oh.
Can I cede a minute of my time to him to finish?
Sorry.
Our next speaker is Wendy A.
Hi, I'm Wendy Akers-Gauche, and I had two items. Oh. So I'm Wendy Akers-Gauche, and I had 2 items. First one was, is there any property acquisition to the west of Alma for Meadow in Charleston? I know you talked about the roundabout, but I'm not sure you guys covered if there's still something to the west. And the second item was, originally the community meetings for grade separation were both in the evenings, and they've now been changed for Meadow and Charleston to 4 to 6 p.m., which impacts anybody who works being able to attend the meeting. And after seeing this presentation, I think it's important to see it in person and to be able to ask questions. And I know there's the online option, but I don't think that's enough. So I'd like to request that there be a meeting scheduled in the meeting for Charleston and Meadow. That's it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth A.
So first of all, I just want to invite everybody to have cookies after the meeting because it's somebody's birthday. It always seems to be a rail committee meeting or something on this day. But anyway, so I'm Elizabeth Alexis. I'm the one who sort of brought forward the underpass concepts. I'm glad to see some refinement being done. I think there's still more questions, more issues. I think, but I am kind of excited that we are like open to changes. I think this is a big deal. I think on the bike network issues, I think we need to put that sort of at the front of this conversation. So first, like any bike lane, if we were to do an underpass, should extend all the way down to Carlson where there is an actual light. But we also really need to help people understand how the bike networks and how likely routes from different destinations to different places that people are going and how they would likely change
their patterns of travel, if you had bike lanes on one side or the other of the road. So it's not just the same thing we have today, but then you'd be inconvenienced, but you may actually change how you ride. I mean, I think that gets into really interesting questions, which is also very valid for the different options you're looking at with the pedestrian underpasses into Seal Park, that you're really looking at travel times from the major origin destination places, and also the reliability of those travel times. People, I think, don't appreciate how much getting rid of an actual signal does to just that reliability, that you can count on it taking 7 minutes instead of sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 9, or whatever. For students trying to get in under the bell, that can make a difference. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to working with everybody on this. And I think we're making progress. It's great. Thank you.
Our next speaker is David M.
Change my glasses so I can see my notes. Yeah, thank you very much for letting me speak. And first of all, thank you guys for all the improvements you've made at Churchill. The electronics and the high tech stuff is very impressive, but the simple physical changes are enormous. They've widened the pedestrian way. They've changed the lights, putting up the no turn on red. And as you noted, we need more enforcement of that. But no turn on red, there is a huge safety thing for both the pedestrians and the drivers, because now the drivers are not pushing way up into the pedestrian pathway. So yeah, huge improvements at Churchill. Thank you very much. The most important thing I want to point out, though, is with respect to the Seal Tunnel, the idea of building the Seal Tunnel, it seems to me it needs to be entirely contingent on the Churchill separation, because if the kids can still bicycle across Churchill, nobody's going to use that tunnel. And I have some very serious concerns about the tunnel, even if that is the case, because the tunnel's safety issues, I think, need to really be addressed. I just was in the Cal Ave tunnel the other day and saw a kid on a bicycle take a dive onto the pavement because he was bicycling around pedestrians. The mixing of the bicycles and pedestrians in these tunnels is very, very dangerous. And especially with respect to the Seal Tunnel being a longer tunnel and kids coming home late at night from school, I don't want my kids driving, bicycling or walking through a dark tunnel late at night. I look at the underpass over at Homer by comparison, where it's wide open and bright and people can see things. Cal Ave tunnel has had trash, has had people sleeping in it, has had assaults in it. I really, really have concerns about the safety of the proposed Seal Tunnel. I want to also thank you, Pat, for mentioning the speed problems on Alma. Alma is a disaster with people speeding, and there's basically zero enforcement. I've seen cars literally roll at the intersection of Seal and Alma. And
This concludes your time. This concludes your time.
I'm sorry. Okay. Just please try to do something about the speed on there. Maybe just one lane northbound there instead of two.
Our next speaker is John M.
Well, thank you. I'm John Melnichuk, and I want to thank the council and the rail committee here for a considerable amount of progress. I feel very much better about what's happening than I have in past meetings. The safety improvements that Caltrain is committed to, the speed with which the city is implementing them is very impressive. The one thing I wanted to ask about is that within the plans that are coming forward, I'm a neighbor of Caltrain between Meadow and Charleston, and I would like to add that a study be made of the impact of the construction, not just the final product, because we lived with the consequences of upgrades to Caltrain from 1 track to 2 tracks and then electrification. And we didn't sleep for a long time because there was construction every night for years on end. And we'd ask that Caltrain and the city be considerate of the neighbors of these gigantic construction projects. And thanks again for taking positive steps to make things safer. And we would like to be able to sleep at night during construction. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Adrian B.
Thank you. My name is Adrian Brandt. I'm the chair of the advisory committee for Caltrain, but speaking as an individual. Followed this pretty closely, and I am just blown away by what the city and the residents are willing to do to their street network just to avoid elevating the train just a little bit more. Your hybrid alternatives speak of 4 to 6 feet, lowering the roads 4 to 6 feet. And if you would just only raise the train 4 to 6 more feet and use a thin bridge to get the necessary elevation, you do not have to displace any properties. You do not have to change your street network. None of these Rube Goldbergian blockages and roundabouts and closing park and all this kind of nonsense. You can preserve all movements, and it's perfectly logical. Now, I see the charts. You have the level of service. I know the state of California wanted to move away from LOS because the focus really should be on VMT. And certainly, if you make driving easier, more people will do it. I know it's controversial, but I think that people ought to be on the ground and not be forced into tunnels and whatnot. And let the traffic wait a little bit longer. But the streetscape of Palo Alto would be so much more nicer and human scale versus sort of Caltrans tunnels and bridges that we're looking at for the hybrid and for the partial underpass. I really think from a cost perspective as well, with the increased allowable maximum grade that Caltrain now has put in place, the ramping distances and the cost, I have to think, are very, very competitive and should be much cheaper to just fully elevate the train over both Charleston and Meadow. And life would go on just as it was before, unchanged. So I would urge reconsidering that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stephen R.
Hi, my name's Steve.
Stephen R., you may now speak.
Yeah, I got unmuted and muted. Steve Rosenblum, thank you for the opportunity to speak, council members. I would like to align myself with Adrian B's comments about the viaduct being the proper solution. But I think, first of all, the traffic analysis of the Churchill partial closing left out one key point. What is the amount of delay associated with closing one of the 6 east-west crossings, one of the 7 east-west crossings of the tracks? That traffic is going to have to go on to other streets where the crossing times are going to increase. So if somebody wants to cross Churchill across the tracks, where do they go? How do they do it? How much longer does it take them? So that's one question. The other question is sort of the complications associated with these complicated movements, particularly with the underpass. The large amount of dirt that has to be moved will require huge costs and long construction times with major intrusions onto traffic movements along the streets of those areas. Probably trucks, heavy construction trucks, dump trucks moving night and day, moving hundreds of or thousands of tons of dirt. So as Adrian pointed out, the costs and the disruption to this, are they really an advantage over a viaduct which goes the length of some of these crossings, which may be more expensive initially, but avoids all the complicated traffic movements and traffic arrangements and the long disruption of vehicular traffic during construction. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Penny E.
Hello, this is Penny Elson. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And also, this is a great meeting. I'm really glad to see that progress is being made. Most of my questions about Churchill have been asked, so I'm going to focus on Charleston and Meadow. The consultant seemed a little surprised to hear about thousands of units of new housing coming in South Palo Alto. Am I reading that right? His reaction was a little bit surprised. And can we please make sure going forward that that is somehow incorporated into traffic analysis if he was in fact surprised? I'm curious if anyone has studied whether or not the changes, that the new proposed changes might encourage neighborhood cut through in the South Palo Alto neighborhoods. There are school routes that run through the Circles areas and the Green Meadow neighborhood. And we would hate to see, and these will be creating new bike routes for the San Antonio area planning process as well, a bicycle boulevard extension, actually. So I think this is going to be very important to consider. I noted that a bike facility was narrowed from 20 to 14 feet. That's losing 6 feet in an area that curved, and pedestrians and bicycles are sort of mixing it up. And that seems to me like a lot. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to maybe widen that some to give people comfortable room, especially when on a school route. Thank you so much. Appreciate all that you're doing.
Through the chair, this concludes public comment.
Thank you. And did either Edgar or Rippon have any responses to any questions that were raised by public?
With regards to the units to the south near San Antonio, that was included or envisioned as part of the future traffic analysis. We wanted to at least in the future acknowledge that that is part of the documentation. Let's see. Going back, there's quite a bit here. So with regards to Eric's comments in terms of clearances, utilizing 7%, yes, would be tough to be able to make that clear. This ramp would have to approach 8% grade to be able to get underneath Alma and the railroad. And it's mostly to avoid driveways or closure of driveways. It's a nature of having a gentler grade means your ramps get longer. And so we're looking for opportunities to be able to reduce those potential property impacts. Now, if it is the rail committee's direction, city council's direction to explore gentler grades and have a larger footprint, that is something that we would explore as part of the design team.
Thank you. And just first following up on that issue, it really goes to the issue of trade-offs that we're going to be looking at. Yeah. Well, the optimum for bikes and pedestrians may not be the optimum for property impacts, et cetera. And so I think what I'd really value is, as this especially gets ready to go to the council, is showing here are the two alternatives on a steeper grade and a less grade, and here are the trade-off, the options and trade-offs. For example, we have, like at Cal Ave, the pedestrian underpass. We would never build that steep of an underpass today, but what's the grade there? Do you happen to know?
We will get that information back to you.
It's pretty steep. I think far more than we're considering and more than we would want, but where are we between what's ideal for bikes and peds versus other trade-offs we have to struggle with? And then the construction impacts. Last year, we were clearly, we had a presentation on potential construction impacts based on the versions that we had after Caltrain said what we couldn't do. And now we're moving forward there. Can you just clarify at what point in time we would take these refinements and then also look at what are the construction impacts? 'Cause we're all very aware of that.
That process has already started. Okay. Initially through understanding what the potential work windows would be, recognizing the ability to be able to operate the railroad, that there are now homes adjacent to the railroad, the ability to be able to provide that space for the contractor to perform the work either at daytime or nighttime, and the type of work that may be limited at each of those times. And so that's part of the initial workshops that have already initiated. However, there's still more trade-offs and more discussion to be had associated with
They're very
constructability.
much a big part of the considerations.
Absolutely.
And when we go and look at alternatives, that the council will need to understand at least a fair amount on not only the outcomes, but the years of construction impact and which has the lowest impact in that regard.
And I will note that anytime you're changing the profile of the railway, at that point, it does require a shoe fly or temporary tracks. So once you get into temporary tracks, you need minimum clearance from the existing tracks, the operating tracks, which will mean operational changes to Alma Street. It will mean a change in that cross section during the construction of that alternative.
And then one of the speakers raised the question of, on seal that it wouldn't go through presumably unless and until we do a Churchill underpass. Those two would be related to each other. The council has previously, and the existing direction is that to prioritize Charleston and Meadow, and therefore the Churchill package, which would include seal, is not on the same track of timeline as Charleston and Meadow. And given the significant increase in costs of grade separations that have already severely set back Rengstorff and Mountain View and Broadway and Burlingame, the ability to fund Churchill is, in my opinion, not on the horizon. And whether we would want to do that or not, we'll have a challenge really funding Charleston and Meadow. And then presuming the council maintains the prioritization that it has consistently stated, we wanted to take the Churchill and seal forward through the engineering design so that we could understand for the future how we could optimize those. But it's not, I don't think it's likely to be proceeding in the foreseeable future, is my own personal opinion. And then lastly, just one thing that you had pointed out on the hybrid versus the underpass. The hybrid does not essentially improve traffic flow, and the underpass does, correct?
Well, in the short term, it would improve traffic flow because it would, because now
until the traffic
grows to a certain point, and then it would effectively no longer.
So the underpass had significant traffic flow advantages over hybrid.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions?
Chair, but
yes.
Couple more comments from the commenters. One thing is about the meeting, the community meeting that we would have on on September 30th. So one thing we could do is we will record the meeting on YouTube, and that meeting will be available on YouTube for people who would not be able to attend it in person, so that they can watch the presentation and then provide us a feedback electronically or via email. Second thing would be we would also leave the boards that we use for presentations in the meeting, and so if they are there even after the meeting, we could entertain some of those quick concerns and comments during or after the Churchill Avenue presentation. And also one of the commenter commented about the travel times for the vehicular as well as the pedestrians for the partial underpass scenario. So we have previously done studies, and they are available on our website as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I know that time is short. We have another item, and two of us are on the Finance Committee that's meeting in here in an hour. And this is so important. I'm going to try to speak really quickly about my concerns, which I hope I have condensed, or my questions and feedback. I think you've heard great feedback from the public that this presentation was very much appreciated in terms of the degree of detail, the way things were explained. I just want to commend you for that. I value the comments we heard about viaduct, but I think that ship has sailed. I am concerned about adequate notice to the public on this issue for this meeting. For example, the images were all but impossible to see online. We got printed images, those of us on the committee, that were nice and big, I could see, but when you're talking about a project that potentially impacts people's greatest asset and they can't even access the material properly, it's a concern about whether they were adequately noticed and really empowered to participate. So I want to just encourage us to continue to try to do better on how the packet is available in a timely fashion. We didn't even have the staff report / Caltrain report until last night. I think the public got it last night. We on the committee got it a couple of hours before. We on the committee got it a couple of hours before this meeting. Am I wrong about that?
So the whole packet was available. Only one exhibit, which was the exhibit I, was delivered as a late packet last Thursday, but whole packet was available online.
I mean the presentations that were made today.
Only the presentation, but
Right,
the
but that's
packet
where the
was.
detail was on the takings, for example. There was nothing in the packet that listed the number of potential full or partial takings, for example. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, on the Yom Kippur difficulty, these meetings were originally scheduled, public outreach, September 30th, October 1st. Someone very rightly said, hey, October 1st is the start of Yom Kippur. You can't do that. The city said, you're absolutely right, we can't. And now we have squished these meetings into 4 to 6 p.m. on the 30th for Charleston Meadow and 6 to 8 p.m. for Churchill. As has been mentioned by a member of the public, that doesn't feel very equitable for those who are working, who care deeply about this issue, to try to make it to a public meeting squished into 4 to 6 p.m. on something so important. I just urge us to see if it's possible to do better. It had originally been planned for 2 nights, and I'd love to see us figure out how to do that. Okay. When we get to Charleston and Meadow, there were beautiful renderings of the underpass options for both Charleston and Meadow, but there was not a single rendering of the hybrid option. And I wonder why that is. It sort of feels as if we're being pushed toward underpass. And I hope that as we go forward, we will present whatever options are presented to council. We get a full rendering of each. Each one is treated equitably when it comes to it's like presenting it on a trash can lid versus presenting it on a china plate. That full rendering, really allows you to envision it. We did not get that for hybrid. Speaking of hybrid, we did envision and discuss that hybrid could be on pedestals or podiums. I'm not sure what you call the sort of bridge supports as opposed to the earthen wall. And I think it's important in the sketch of hybrid, it looked like a wall that you couldn't see through. So I think it is important to visually demonstrate that hybrid could be something you could see through at various intervals. A member of the public asked about whether there were any west side potential takings west of Alma. I don't know if the question was Charleston or Meadow, but I wonder if you could answer whether those potential takings were only on the east side or are they on the west? Believe the question was Meadow and Charleston.
Apologies. If we can go to slide, I want to say it's 36. My numbers got cut off. Yes, slide 36. Or sorry, 35. Apologies. So yes, there is one potential full acquisition on the north west side of the crossing, on the north side of this pink path here that is anticipated. Again, as the design is refined, it'll be determined exactly how. And then there are some driveway modifications as Charleston comes down. Park Boulevard also needs to come down, so there would likely be some driveway modifications and access modifications off of that to be able to make that connection.
Thank you. And my final question is for, I think, the city manager. There's been a concern expressed, if not today, elsewhere, perhaps in email set. Letters went out to people potentially impacted by the Seal Bridge. And people are expressing concern that their properties are already impacted in that they have to disclose this now if their property is going up for sale or being reappraised or refinanced. And I wonder if you or if someone on your team can speak to the city's sense of the validity of that concern or the degree to that concern is valid.
Yes, staff to confirm on seal whether there was something specific there, or I am aware of, I think the chair mentioned earlier, concerns raised related to the South Palo Alto bikeways.
So there were no recent letters that were sent out for this project. There was a letter sent out previously after the council presentations where the right-of-way impacts were.
Sorry, it's my mistake. I didn't mean to say seal. I meant South Palo Alto bikeways. But I guess your point was it was out of scope for this meeting. Is that what you
Well,
said?
not the topic that we're discussing at the moment. I would just comment that, again, it is part of our outreach very early in the process. And I think entirely appropriate for members of the community to provide us that feedback as we are working on a variety of alternatives. And noting that notices in that case went out not only to properties that are potentially impacted, but also adjacent. So there was a slightly broader range of residents that were contacted.
I'll just say that given that that has happened, the need is for this to move as quickly through the narrowing of alternatives as possible so that people that can be removed from consideration are done so.
Yeah, I hear that.
Nadia?
I was just going to recommend that it looks like if you're having a November rail committee meeting and then a December decision meeting, for members of the public, I think it would be really important for you guys to have a study session of city council and then a decision, because in my experience with rail over the years, when you're giving this much technical information, I mean, these guys have been trained. You have 3 people who are very on top of this, but you're talking about people who are newly elected to the council, who've never been through real deep rail presentations before. And I appreciate that staff could spend time bringing them up to speed, but it's just a lot. And being able to lay out what those decisions are, the way we've always done it in the past is study session, and then at least a week later, then we have a meeting. And I know that the timelines are tight, and that's never a good answer for what you guys have to do on your side, and easy for me to say, but I would just really hope that we could do that. I appreciated what Julie said. I think the more pictures, the better, and they should be even across all the things. And I just wanted to say that as someone who's been doing this for a long time, it's been a pleasure to work with Edgar and with Jill and with Caltrain. I think we've made tremendous progress. I think this has been a great way to think about stuff. But there's a lot more information to come, even for your November meeting. And I realize that you're just going to be presenting concepts for the bike ped crossings, but there's like 6 or 8 alternatives for what Charlie's been working on. That's a lot more data to throw into the same meeting when you're going to be asking this committee to make a decision or a recommendation for council. So I might also suggest a special meeting either for the bikes or for this part. And I know that this part depends on additional work that's coming from the construction workshops and from other things. So I think there's a lot of behind the scenes staff time to help figure out what's the best way to present this to the policymakers and certainly to the public, because I can see very upset faces about having to attend only one meeting on what to them is one of the biggest decisions for their property impacts, right? So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I would concur that it's really important for the council to be able to have the opportunity to understand this in depth and to be able to think about it and follow up before they then subsequently have to make really consequential decisions on things that much of the council is not very familiar with at this point in time. And it's a serious responsibility for the council to be suddenly become quasi-experts on such a thing, to make quality decisions. And so I think we really do need to look, and if it may need a special meeting for the on a non-regular meeting for the study session, I don't know, but I think we need to think along those lines.
And may I just add, we've talked about the importance of really good visuals for each option. So each is presented equitably. I think there's also those of us who really learn by seeing things in a structured order. And so I know you've done great, or some of your predecessors, maybe some people in the room have done great charts comparing the options with the, against the various variables from cost to time to property impacts to safety improvements, traffic delay improvements, et cetera. There are so many competing factors here. And we know hybrid is the fewer property impacts, but we know underpass relieves the traffic delays. And, for people who are brand new to this to come up to speed on those facts, let alone be able to come to a decision ultimately about, what's going to turn out to be more important. I think the way in which the material is presented and, so people can digest it and come to their, to a good analysis on their own, is going to be really important. And I think you're quite capable of doing that.
All right. On that note, thank you for a really great presentation, and thanks for the members of the public who waited in. We'll now go on to our second item, which is quiet zone implementation project at existing grade crossings, Churchill, East Meadow, and Charleston. Okay, Ripon, you're going to kick it off?
Yes.
Thanks.
Good afternoon again. So this item is to discuss the quiet zone alternatives and seek direction from Rail Committee. We do have staff from project technical team, Taylor Brown and Blake Silkwood, supporting us with any technical details. They were supporting us in preparing the quiet zone study as well as the concept plans. Next slide, please. So we have a brief agenda going over the background, technical details, and review of alternatives, and to seek direction on the next steps. So our goal here is to implement quiet zone along Caltrain corridor, and objective tonight is to seek direction from the Rail Committee for selection and recommendations of the improvements that we can use for implementation of the improvements. Next slide, please. The study area comprises of the three crossings, Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston. I'd like to note Palo Alto Avenue is already underway as they have a construction going, previously reported in our verbal updates. And also to note that this initiative is an interim measure separately in advance from the grade separation project. Next slide, please. So at the August meeting in last year, Rail Committee selected two alternatives to proceed forward with approaching noise reduction at these crossings. One was the quiet zone implementation through 4-quadrant gate systems, and otherwise to use a wayside horn system as an alternative to quiet zone for noise reduction. Next slide, please. As we all know, noise is regulated by FRA. So there is audible levels, which is a threshold range, and Caltrain has adjusted to the lowest range possible. Also, advanced notice of 20 seconds before approaching the tracks is required by FRA. So the train horns and is regulated and established by the FRA. Just next slide, please. So in a quiet zone, when established, the train horn does not need to be sounded as they're approaching. And to establish a quiet zone, just to reiterate the fact that the additional measures are needed, which would lower the risk of the crossing to below levels of when of an existing conditions, and the existing conditions at these crossings do not meet those threshold for quiet zone, and as a result, supplementary measures were required. So next slide, please. And for wayside horns, it's almost like a substitution of an existing horn. So it's just placed at a static location at the crossing. And so the way it helps is it reduces the noise because it is a unidirectional horn. And so it reduces the noise footprint. Next slide, please. This particular exhibit shows a typical noise footprint for a traditional horn when blowing through by the engineer approaching this train on the train. Next slide. And this slide shows the noise footprint for the wayside horn. So you can see that it's significantly reduced for the wayside horn, and that's one of the reason we are considering wayside horn as an alternative measure to quiet zone for implementation of noise reduction. The studies have shown it's about 80 to 90% reduction in the noise footprint for the wayside horns. Next slide, please. So any implementation of these improvements require coordination with the railroad authorities, including Federal Railroad Administration, the Union Pacific Railroad, the operating railroads, which is Union Pacific and Caltrain, as well as the California Public Utilities Commission. So staff, along with the consultant, have diagnostic meetings with those agencies involved, and discussed our projects for their feedback and their input. Next slide, please. This is our study phase. So just to reiterate, we are in the current stage is our study phase, and the next phase would be the implementation phase. Once we have the council direction on moving with a particular concept, particular strategy, we will design and implement those improvements. Next slide, please. The concept plans were prepared by our consultants for new vehicle gate arms for 4-quadrant systems at all Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston. Next slide. And also for wayside horns, we also looked at where those placements could occur and existing, existing improvements that could align with these proposed improvements. Next slide, please. This particular slide gives a comparison of different elements between the wayside horns and quad gate system that can provide you a summary of comparison between the two systems. Certainly the cost for a wayside horn is a lot less compared to the quad gate systems. It is less complex to install and less time consuming to install, or the construction timeline is less compared to the 4 quad gate systems, because it requires a little lesser review, as well as the construction timeline could be shorter. But the fact that there is the Caltrain already has quad gate systems or gate systems mechanism they are very used to. They have vendors on board to address any maintenance issues in case of any work fault or shutdowns on those gate systems. So there is that expertise already with Caltrain. I like to note that we did conducted the community outreach meeting in April earlier this year, and there was overwhelming support to provide a full quiet zone through quad gate systems, which was our community's overwhelming support for that. There was and 4 quad gate system provides the actual quiet zone, whereas the wayside horn actually provides the noise reduction because it just has a supplementary horn. So another fact that is that the 4 quad gate systems provide for the infrastructure that can be supportive of the future high-speed rail, because those are also requirements to them. So these interim measures can support our long-term needs in case in some of those improvements or grade separation is not conducted prior to those future implementation of high-speed rail. Next slide, please. We briefly touched upon the timeline it takes to implement a project. I know I have always said 3 to 5 years, and I just try to portray here what does it all entails, from the procurement of the consultant to the design and reviews and seeking of the permitting from Caltrain, agreements with Caltrain as well CPUC, and then the procurement of the construction contractor to implement those construction, and then seeking authorizations from the Federal Railroad Administration. So on a lower end, the time would be about 36 months, and on the higher end, it could take almost as much as 5 years. And so there's that time period within which these projects are implemented. And these align with a lot of the other cities that have done these projects that we have checked with, and also our experience with Palo Alto. Next slide, please. So we are asking Rail Committee to review these study findings and give directions to the staff for taking it to the as recommendations to the City Council in proceeding with one of the alternatives for implementation of the noise reductions at these crossings. That concludes the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you. Before hearing from the public, any questions?
Yep.
Yeah, Ed?
I can guess, but at the bottom of the packet page 22, you talk about conducting reviews. Could you tell us what that means? Is that reviews by all the other agencies?
Correct. So CPUC, FRA, and sorry about that. Yeah, the reviews are conducted by Caltrain, FRA, CPUC. So all those agencies have to review the proposed concepts, the proposed designs, and then approve of those before proceeding with any implementation.
Mm. Okay, and is there any estimate of, you referenced the city's capital improvement program, is there any estimate of what percentage of that might be ours, or do we have full discretion? I mean, it's just a number right now that we have to make, right?
So the cost is going to be totally on city at this time. There's no additional funding source. We looked into different sources of funding, and most other funding sources do not allow for quiet zone implementation. They do have safety measures and for other things, but even we checked with Section 130, Section 180, Section 190, all those different sources of funding do not approve of use it for the quiet zone implementation.
Those were my questions.
Thank you. And on the slide that had the summary of findings, I didn't see a comparison of the time to implement of the wayside versus the quiet zone.
So
is that there? No.
So the typical time it takes for any railroad projects is in that timeline, and we believe that it would be on a lower end of that timeline for wayside homes because of the less complexity and cost. But it goes through the similar review processes and approvals from those agencies, and agreements are required. The procurement of consultant is required. Procurement of the contractor would be required. So typical timelines for those implementations are same until.
Well, we can see that slide that had the timeline for quad gates.
Next slide, please.
What's involved in the design and the construction for a wayside horn, my understanding is it's a fraction of what it is on the quad for the full quiet zone. So I think it's important that we actually compare those timelines.
There was something, I agree with you, Pat. There was something in the report that said wayside horn, approximately 36 to 42 months. So that's 3 years to 3.5 years, whereas quad gates, 42 months to 60 months.
Yeah, I'd like to see it in more detail, and then comparison to actual other cities that have done each of those and what has been their actual timeline. Because even on the quiet zones, I've seen references that seem to be shorter timelines on that, and similarly on the wayside horn, shorter yet.
So I like to say that I did check with a lot of agencies that were quoted by some of the individuals at our previous meetings. I reached out to County of Sonoma and also their staff with different agencies, including Windsor and other staff. They have been in the process since 2016, 17, or even before. The thing is that it requires agreements with with maintenance agreements, operation agreements, and other agreements, which can take longer time period than the actual amount of the work that requires to be done. So the agreements and the reviews and approvals does take a longer time than the actual design work. So these 12 to 18 months includes timings to have an agreement with Caltrain, timings to have agreements with reviews by some of these internal reviews, because you have to get the reviews done at different levels of completion from those agencies as well. So it's not only Caltrain review, it's going to go through CPUC review as well as FRA approval too.
And is it all of these steps have to occur in sequence rather than some in parallel?
So there are some overlaps which are assumed, but we want to make sure that at the same time there is some conservative level of timelines that we can deliver on. There is going to be always some efficiencies that we can look into to have, but the practical timelines are that's our experience. And I'll add if our consultants may have more experience on different projects, that if they like to add or anything that they.
I would only want to add that this timeline does align with what we've spoken to with projects adjacent and across the country.
And then lastly, Caltrain has had a position over the years, even though they have allowed quiet zones, they have reservations on loss of the safety of horn blasting. I'm not sure I agree with that. It's a factor that wasn't on that comparison list. I think in our community, we have an additional concern, which is horn noise is a constant announcement of lethal means to people who would be momentarily considering self-harm. And the noise itself is a reminder for all of our students that are at Pali High right next to tracks and otherwise. So I'm not sure I agree with Caltrain's point of view on that, but I just wanted to put that on the table.
So I like to say these are FRA approved methodologies allows under the Code of Federal Regulations. We certainly, Caltrain engineer has certainly all rights when they have a perceived conditions of safety that they can blow their horn, and also bells and lights are flashing at the intersections for immediate safety. So it needs.
Oh, one other thing, you mentioned that the quad gates for this would enable high-speed rail because, and I think everybody needs to understand that high-speed rail, if they operate below 120 miles an hour in our corridor, by law, they are not required to grade separate. So we could have 120 mile an hour high-speed rail trains and no grade separations. The high-speed rail business plan and the funding that you hear about in the press and the massive number does not include the cost of grade separations, not only from San Jose to San Francisco, but also all the ones that are at grade from Gilroy to San Jose. And so I just want to make sure people understand that reality. It's once again not one that a number of us agree should be the case, but that's the way it is currently established. All righty. Do we have members of the public who would like to speak?
Chair, we have 6 members of the public that would like to speak. And then I did want to remind everyone that there's a finance committee after this, and the clerk's staff does need time to set up. Yep.
So we'll let 2 minutes per speaker.
Our first speaker is Eric N.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that few of the communities have selected wayside horns and that some of them who have decided to have switched to quadrants later. There's also a potential of 400,000 extra per crossing for wayside horns if they need signal cabinets, which was not sort of determined whether that was necessary or not. And since grade crossings are anticipated, I was wondering, given the large expense of these gates, is there a market for used crossing gates? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth A.
Alexis, I'm just delighted to see that we are looking at ways. Elizabeth Alexis, delighted to hear we are looking at ways to reduce the noise, which my house is further away than it showed any noise, and we are getting blasted every night. It's very bad for people's health, so I'm glad we're moving forward on this. I would just note that the quad gates are really a solution that is designed to improve the safety in places where they have very long freight trains. So the common thing that people do is try and beat that, and they try and go around it. We don't really have that issue. Our issue is more frequent trains. And I'm actually concerned that a quad gate might trap somebody on the railroad tracks instead, because that's more of an issue we have, is that people are sort of creeping up. And just to understand that all of the calculators from the FRA are actually really more geared around to the issues that people have with freight trains and grade steps, and rather than the issue that we have. I mean, the amount of the process here is just horrific. I have sent something to, I think I sent it to Pat and to Ripon, just to, I mean, the PUC actually there's a legal exemption for wayside horns. It is categorically exempt from CEQA. I mean, I don't want to go all Ezra Klein like abundance here, but like, we're not the first people to do this. I mean, we have existing now really good engineering drawings of each of these crossings because of other safety improvements we've done. Just stick away high side horn on there. And, like the idea that this would take, beyond the time that we just have to put it in our applications. I mean, please get this thing done. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Melinda M., followed by John M.
Thank you to the committee for the work you're doing. I'm really surprised, and thanks to Kimley Horn for their report, which clearly advocated for the quad gates. So I'm really surprised to hear conversations that are still going to the wayside horns. Having ridden my bike to Stamford for about 20 years across the meadow crossing, the idea of being there on my bike and having the wayside horns blast me and the pedestrians and the people that are in that vicinity. I mean, if Atherton can take care of their people, Palo Alto should be able to take care of us. I mean, I'm just shocked that we're even talking about this outmoded technology. It's in the report, they talked about Arizona, that I think, places are changing from it. The horns are failing. So I think what I've heard in the earlier part of the meeting with Caltrain, we're making the crossings more safe for everyone. We can get the quad gates. We can move this forward, and we can sleep at night. So, I mean, please, let's do something about it. So what I'd like to know is, what is it going to take to move this forward out of the committee? Are we of the 42 to 60 months? Are we at month 0? Are we at month 12? Where I saw the chart, where are we? Because 16 years ago, now probably 17 years ago, Atherton did it. We've been asking for this for at least that long. So please, I'm begging you, no wayside horns. We cannot tolerate more noise for the people on the street or our neighbors. So
this concludes your
move
time.
it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John M.
Hello, and thank you again. I'm really happy to know that council is behind, or the rail committee is getting behind the idea of implementing quiet zones. As far as I understand, it's Caltrain and Union Pacific won't have a say. This is in the city's authority to establish a quiet zone. And if there's quad gates, it'll be a permanent change. If wayside horns fail, then the horns will start blowing again. There's been good documentation from sources I've read, other railway engineers and other companies, that wayside horns are an outdated technology that will fail. It's hard to find parts for them. It's hard to find companies that they're willing to sell them, but they're not around to service them. Sometimes there's problems with integration between the wayside horn technology and the control boxes at different intersections. I'd be willing to wait 6 more months for a better solution. There's, in the chart that came up from the staff, there was a recommendation or evidence that the community strongly favors quad gate implementation. Please, let's find the money to do it. We've been waiting quite a long time for it. And if Atherton can do it, we can do it. You guys are doing terrific work. We'll ask also for better access to information in a timely way. It's been very difficult, I have to say, to find information on the city website, and we don't want to bother Sam or Rippon with endless phone calls trying to find out what's happening with diagrams, timelines, things like that. This is a critical project for my neighborhood and for my neighbors. And we'd like to know what's going on so we can contribute to the conversation, not a week before city council makes a decision. We need information in a timely way as well, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Herb B.
Hey, Chair Burton, committee members, all the money spent on the train crossings and the time spent to do it doesn't affect when trains are sounding horns between those intersections. And in terms of the noise footprint at night, the ambient sound is lower, and when freight trains operators are doing it, that's even more disturbing. In both correspondence before, I forgot which year that I sent summaries off to the committee and council, that essentially the train operators have discretion. Oh, if there's a safety issue anyway, they can sound the horn. When they're passing a station, they can sound the horn. And I don't know if that includes when stations are closed, such as the Stanford is most of the time, or at night when the Caltrain has no service, but the freight trains are going by. The sense I get from myself and from others is that there's excessive use of the horns between these crossings. And in the case of the freight train, we thought we might have more ability to do something about it if we had a short haul operator rather than a freight train that was part of a big system. And you don't have to wait for all that time doing the study on the crossings to document the extent to which horns are being sounded excessively between train crossings. And I don't know, maybe it's a particular train operator, but clearly, from my own experience and from those of others, it's not just, hearing late at night when a train is going by one of these vehicle crossing locations, but it's happening more often to that and in more locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Adrian B.
Thank you again. Adrian Brandt speaking as an individual. Pat Burt was right about grade crossings. High-speed rail does not plan to build any grade separations. One modification to what he said is that 110 miles an hour is as fast as you can go with normal grade crossing technology. 120 requires exotic impenetrable barriers, which they won't pay for and nobody's actually using that I know of in the US. So 110 is pretty much the top speed. The point Elizabeth Alexis raised is also accurate. Largely the quad gate issue, it's a formula. So we have to comply with that formula that the FRA has, but we do not have lengthy freight trains that trundle along forever. And quad gates are really designed to prevent drive-arounds. And happily, Caltrain does not suffer those. There's no history that I'm aware of incidents involving people driving around the gates. But nevertheless, we do need those to comply with the rules to get a proper quiet zone, not a fake quiet zone, as with the wayside horns. Wayside horns, there are videos of wayside horns in California, and they're awful. I would not want to impose those on anyone living nearby, or as the other commenter mentioned, as pedestrians or bicyclists, having those blowing in your face. The videos show what those wayside horns do is they just constantly keep blowing over and over and over again, not just 4 times like the trains do, but constantly until the crossing gate is no longer active. So it's just a constant cacophony of horn blowing. Admittedly, it may not have as big a footprint, but it's awful. So I would really discourage pursuing those. The other point on the timelines, I know the city of Atherton at Watkins established their quiet zone very quickly after the station was closed. And I know the city of Petaluma also did it very quick. So those are examples. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes public comment.
Thank you. And with this action item, we're being asked to provide a recommendation for a preferred option to the city council. So given our late hour, let's focus on what our recommendation would be. Ed?
I'm happy to make one. Given the data that we have, coming into this, I felt that we would like to shorten these timeframes for either one of these. We're hearing that we can't, but I don't see any reason to invest in the short-term one and spend an extra 1.7 million. So I think we should recommend that we do the gate crossings and,
Four quadrant.
the quadrants. I meant to say the quadrant. Yeah, in the quiet zone through a CIP process.
And just to clarify, we're not assuming that if there was a wayside horn, it would be additive cost. It's either or is the assumption. But I'm not disagreeing with your recommendation. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. Okay.
Julie?
Yeah, I guess, given the time, we do not have adequate time to discuss it. We've hardly said anything about what we think about this, and there isn't time. So I feel that the action in front of us is really to give council the option for both of these things and let council have a proper conversation about this, because we simply can't. I am in favor of the 4-quad, and I'm really interested in whether Wayside is a good shorter term solution. In some ways, reduce some amount of noise for a whole lot of people until we can get quad gates. But I'm not sure we have time to adequately debate that amongst ourselves in the time remaining.
Well, the council would, even if we made a recommendation of one or the other, the council would still be presented with the information on the alternative, correct?
Yes, and according to your procedures, if it's a unanimous recommendation, it would go on consent, and if it were not, then it could be action, or the committee could specifically request that it be a action item.
Correct. And I would say that this is such a significant item that we would want to have it as an action item, even if we're unanimous in our recommendation. So I would actually support the recommendation that we pursue wayside horns for Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston. Excuse me, I misspoke. Pursue the other option. 4-quadrant gates and quiet zones for Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston.
So we could take that vote, which I think would be 2-1, and then it would go to.
Well, we'll take a vote and figure out what it is.
Before we take the vote, let's strategically discuss what is the right thing to do here. So if we go 2-1 and it ends up coming to council, it's going to delay. It's going to take longer for it to come on an action calendar than it would on consent.
No, my recommendation is either way, whether it's unanimous or not, it should be an action item. It's a significant community decision.
Okay. So could somebody repeat the motion, please?
Yeah, it's that we would recommend, and that's all we're doing, 4-quadrant gates and quiet zones.
And
it's really
establishment of quiet zone
for Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston. That's simple.
That's basically what I said too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm making the motion.
Okay, I thought I made it, but I'm happy to second it.
Oh, you said if you made a motion, that's, we get that. Well, if we make a motion, we'll say I'm making a motion. Okay. If you want to make that motion, great, I will second it. Okay. Done. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay.
Just for the purpose of clarity, and it includes that it be agendized for action with the full city council.
Correct. Thank you. And
we've indicated that the report will also include information about wayside horns.
Correct.
Okay.
So if the clerk could call the roll.
Mayor Lowing.
Yes.
Councilmember Burt.
Yes.
Councilmember LeCaims.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes our meeting.
Thanks.